Are you feeling tired, moody, or struggling with weight? In today's episode of the Menowave Lounge, our guest, a former teacher turned wellness advocate, shares her battle with thyroid cancer and how it revealed the power of nutrition in managing chronic health issues. Join us as we uncover the secrets to managing stress, balancing hormones, and debunking nutritional myths. Tune in for practical tips and an inspiring story that will help you take charge in your health in this episode of the Menowave Lounge, Hot Flashes and Cool Conversations.
Welcome, everyone, to the Menowave Lounge, Hot Flashes and Cool Conversations. I'm Robin Duke, and this is Marti, Daly. And today we have Tiffany Flaten with us. Hi, Tiffany. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
We're so glad you're on the show today. You're just going to share so many wonderful things with us.
Tiffany, we're super excited to have you. And for those who don't know her yet, Tiffany Flaten is the founder of Rock Bottom Wellness, and she's a board-certified nutritionist specializing in thyroid and hormone imbalances. With a BS in biology, an Master's of Education in Teaching and Learning, and an MS in Nutrition and Human Performance, Tiffany combines scientific knowledge with educational expertise. Since 2013, Rock Bottom Wellness has offered personalized, holistic approaches to address nutrient deficiencies and chronic health issues. Tiffany's journey from high school teacher to advocate for wellness stems from her own health challenges. She authored Rock Bottom Thyroid Treatment and has spoken at Stanford, MIT, and Oxford, and been featured on CBS, NBC, Fox, and an expert profile and Voyage Minnesota magazines. Tiffany, welcome to the Menowave Lounge. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
So before we get started, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Menopalooza Retreat. That's coming up in Sedona, Arizona on November 4th through the 7th. It's going to be at the Wild Resort and Spa. And we are so excited because we are going to have some of our amazing provider experts coming and speaking. And this is a retreat where you can come and make friends. You can be around a great environment. Sedona is just beautiful if you've never been there. And this is a perfect time of year to come and enjoy and just soak in that whole environment. It's just so beautiful and wonderful to be there. We are also having a Marble of the Day contest. And when you sign up for the Menopalooza Retreat and you listen to the Marble of the Day contest, you can be entered into win a $250 spa gift certificate to the Wild Resort and Spa. So how exciting is that?
Yes. And so when we say the Marble of the Day, sometime throughout this podcast, and we will announce it, you won't miss it, then you will see a link in the show notes or in the description of this episode that you can click on and enter that word or marble, and that automatically enters you into the drawing for that spa gift certificate. Now, you have to be signed up for the retreat in order to be eligible to win, but the good news is you're going to have 6 opportunities to enter a marble as you listen to these Menowave Lounge podcasts. We're on our 3rd marble for this episode, but if you missed it, don't worry. You can go back and listen to the previous 2 podcast episodes to find that marble, and stay tuned because we will have more marbles coming. And each time you enter a marble is a new entry. You have up to 6 opportunities to enter the drawing. So it's a fun activity, and I'm super excited to be a part of it. Tiffany, you're going to be there, correct?
Yes, I am. I'll be speaking. Very excited.
Yes, we're excited to hear you speak, and we're excited to learn more about you and your journey and how you're supporting women through menopause throughout this episode. So why not to get us started, Tiffany? Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to how you got here.
So I started off teaching before doing what I'm doing now, and I kind of came to this place because of my own health issues. I had been chronically ill my whole entire life, but of course, anytime that I would go to the doctor and seek help, my labs came back normal, in air quotes, right? Everything was normal, so there was really nothing to see. And even in my early 20s, I started being told, you're just getting older. You are a woman, so of course you have hormones, so that's why you feel like you do. But no solution, no guidance, it was where you walk away, you might sit in your car after your appointment because you feel like absolute garbage with debilitating fatigue, joint pain, anxiety, depression. And like I said, this is starting in my teens for sure. And feeling absolutely hopeless because there's no one there to help and support what you're going through. And then after many more years of struggle, with my health, especially the energy, the depression and anxiety, all kinds of medications, all kinds of therapy, doing everything I knew to do. I was eventually diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And I mistakenly thought that that would be the answer to all of my problems. Because as I was teaching anatomy and physiology, I knew, and I have the biochemistry and the understanding of the physiology of what the thyroid does in your body, and it affects every single cell in the body. So when I had this diagnosis, I thought, this is my problem all along. It just never was caught on any labs that they did. And I thought that would be the ticket. I don't want to have cancer. I don't like it. It's scary. It has metastasized to my lymph nodes. However, this will be taken care of, and I'll just start feeling better once I get on my meds. And I felt worse. I got worse. And what it did was, started prior to that, years prior to that, it started to mess with my sex hormones, my female hormones, my cycles. Those were completely dysregulated, but I didn't know that because the only remedy I was told I could help with that was birth control pills. There's nothing else to do. And then I never was explained the impact of thyroid dysfunction and sex hormone dysfunction, that there's no connection. In fact, one provider told me that they're completely different pathways. One thing doesn't affect the other. So there's kind of nothing to do about that either. So I decided when I was at my doctor's for my cancer, I said, I'm still feeling horrible. It's 3 years in. I don't really have the patience to wait any longer to feel just even like functional, baseline normal. I'm really getting frustrated with that. And what can I do? I eat pretty well. I've always been into nutrition and fitness, but there's probably something more I could do with that. What can I do with my nutrition? And he said, this is a quote, the food you eat doesn't affect how you feel. So
Do you believe that?
so then that was my clue, because then I was like, well, that's what I'm going to do then. Because they're saying that, and this is what they've been telling me for the last 20 years of my life. I don't know if I'm stubborn. I don't know if I'm tenacious. I don't know what it is, but that's when I dug deeper. I started really working through with things. I threw money like crazy at people, people who didn't take insurance because I was not getting anywhere with where I was at and what I was trying to accomplish. And so I was really willing to just invest in myself to figure this out. And the first appointment I had with a naturopathic physician, that's who I sought out the first go around, when she told me after a 2-hour visit, not the 5 to 7 minutes you get kind of, pushed along in the process and in the big system. She said, no wonder you feel terrible. No wonder you feel like garbage. There's no way you could feel better with these labs and these numbers and these symptoms and all that. And I cried because I was finally vindicated. I was like, I am not crazy. I'm not lazy. I'm not just depressed. I'm not all of those things that we kind of put on ourselves and then feel bad about. We can't get better. And so that was the start. And then from there, I just dug into the nutrition. So I quit my job and I went back to school to get my nutrition master's degree so I could be certified and licensed and all the things, all credentialed to do, medical nutrition therapy with people. So my story.
And that's such an interesting story. And it's near and dear to my heart because I didn't have thyroid cancer. I had Graves' disease. And when you talk about the impact of the thyroid hormones on our sex hormones, they didn't tell me anything about that either, but I will share that for the first 20 years that I was a menstruating woman, I only had 3 periods a year. It's after my daughter was born when I was 32. I was 33 when I started back up again, and they'd been regular ever since. But I went that 20 years roughly of not knowing why. And now I know the more about the thyroid stuff is that stuff was going on a long time. When I look back at symptoms of the Graves, probably started, early in my 20s. And no doctor would ever say that. They tried to put me on birth control. I remember asking for years, like, is this related? And they're like, no, you don't have a thyroid problem. There's nothing there. And then after I ended up nuking my thyroid. And so I have no function. I have one. It's just calcified and non-functioning. Mm-hmm. And while I did feel better, and that's probably around the time that my periods did start to regulate again. Now it's just connected that I was 33 when I had that done, but yeah, it didn't make my problems go away other than the period stuff. So it's very interesting how important that thyroid gland is in everything that we do. And what do we do now when that's not there, or if it's not functioning well? And I know as women get older, a lot of times their thyroid function starts to slow down a little bit, and that does play in. And yes, it does. These hormones, what we've learned is that these hormones are interconnected.
They're all interconnected, and so interconnected to when I was, dealing with thyroid cancer, doctoring for that, trying to manage my tumor markers and making sure that they were undetectable. And the way they do that is by medical management, high doses of thyroid medication. That's at the time the only thing they did for me. And then, of course, surveying with imaging and that kind of thing. But I was struggling to go to school and teach because every month it was the point where it affected my day to day with feeling so sick. And that week-long period was actually like 14 days. And it was so heavy and painful that to leave my room to run to the restroom in between class, like that was not an option. That was just not an option. And it became just insurmountable. So the solution for my GP was birth control. And of course, and I'm well past having kids at this point, like that, I'm done having kids. I feel like I don't need to be on birth control at this point in my life. I can't remember how old I was, but it was past the time of needing it. And I just remember asking, I don't want this to affect my tumor markers, my thyroid stuff. I don't want to be flaring up because it's just something slowly brewing there. I don't want to make it worse. And she said, it's a different pathway. It doesn't affect it. No big deal. So I was like, yeah, I'll hop on these pills because I can't function for at least 10 days out of the month, every single month. And within 2 months, my tumor markers peaked right up. And so then my cancer doctor was like, you got to get off that. That's not going to happen. So, out of desperation, you just do what they tell you to do because you're so miserable. And having the knowledge and having, even if you don't want to get into the minutia of the science and the different phases and how everything links together with your hormones and stuff, you have to have some understanding about how your body works. And it kind of baffles me that people only get kind of smart about it once they are so struggling and suffering. And it's sad that we're not taught more things, and that going through menopause and hormonal changes, starting in your early 30s, a lot of times that starts to really start changing. People don't even know what to expect.
And that is very true.
Yeah.
I just have to just say what an amazing story that you're sharing with us. And we're so thankful that you're sharing it, because a lot of women are going through exactly what you are describing right now. And you're right. We don't realize the early symptoms of any of these types of things that are happening to us, let alone very little education. Now, you had talked about nutrition and that you were going back to school to become a nutritionist. Now, how does that play in with this whole picture?
Well, it kind of triggered me because I was like, I feel that I eat pretty well. I am not perfect, but I'm definitely not the standard American diet person. Mostly cooking at home, not really doing boxed quick fix foods and fast food and all that kind of stuff. But I knew there was room for improvement. And when I dove into that more, and it made just a huge difference within a week or two of my symptoms, I was like, oh boy, there is something here. This is where that functional perspective, the medical nutrition perspective, meaning here's your symptom and here's how nutrients and the way you eat can affect how those symptoms are in your body, how they show up in your body or not. And when I saw the resolve of some symptoms drastically reduced in just a couple weeks time, when I've been dealing with it for years, because
you mind sharing some examples of what some of the symptoms that you were experiencing and what you found nutrition wise that had the most impact?
Yeah. So for me, going back to that phase of my life where I was like, there's got to be something. The fatigue was always there, even since I was I don't know, middle school or younger even. I've had this fatigue where I just noticed that my friends aren't as tired as I am. Like something's weird. But it got to be really impactful when you have your own kids and you're working and you're, doing all that kind of stuff. So the fatigue was the worst. Anxiety and depression was really horrible, but the fatigue, it was like, I can't even, like, the idea of waking up in the morning and wanting to go straight back to bed and like having a hard time thinking, how am I going to make it through the next day? And how am I going to go teach 40 anatomy and physiology students in a lab today? How can I do that now? I have to shower. Like, how can I do that part first? And when I first implemented, and I did it kind of reluctantly, because I thought, number one, I'm not wasting away. I'm not emaciated. I don't have like obvious gut health symptoms. And I just don't think I have any of these issues with gluten. And so I did some testing, and not your standard lab type testing. And it showed that I had a significant sensitivity to gluten. I'm not celiac, but I was sensitive to gluten, dairy, but casein in dairy, eggs, and soy. So I already had been avoiding soy because having thyroid condition, but soy is in so many things. I mean, you kind of get it without even trying, just because it's in so many things. And so I basically went cold turkey on all of those things all at the same time.
Wow.
Which means I don't recommend. I don't recommend that. So, and everybody is different, right, with their reactions and their symptoms and stuff. But for me, the reason why I knew it was gluten was like the main game changer for me was within a couple weeks, I did not have the rage what some people talk about with menopause symptoms, like the anger and the frustration and the harsh personality. I didn't always like project that to others, but I felt it inside, and just my reactivity was there. My sadness, the depression part of my symptoms, that alleviated within 2 weeks. I'll even say it started in a weekend, but when I was like, holy buckets, this is the gluten. And then I accidentally got glutened at a restaurant, like about 6-8 weeks in. And it was one of those things, I ordered a salad and they put croutons on it. And I said, I ordered gluten-free. And they're like, oh, okay. And they just went in the back and they just, swept them off. And there's like lots of crumbs in there. I didn't really notice because the dressing was on it and all that stuff. And by the time I got home, I looked like I was 6 months pregnant, and I felt instant rage. And now I know that there are some peptides in that protein, the gluten, that affect brain health. And among other things, there's like a bajillion peptides of the gliadin molecule that can impact us. And just one of them affects mental health. That could be a 5-hour podcast episode talking about the gluten protein, but that was like the first takeaway. And if you have an autoimmune condition, chances are you should pull out gluten. And I think everybody's allergic or sensitive or has celiac? No, but there's something about it, because I think it's in so many processed foods and it's so readily available. I think we're inundated with it. And it's kind of a US thing a little bit, because I know people go to Europe and eat their face off of pasta and don't have any problems.
I'm thinking back when I was in the height of, before I was diagnosed with Graves', I would get this white hot rage. Like I would startle really easily. And if somebody, it was like, just like someone outside of me would just get so just ragey at them. Just for our women who may not be aware, first question I have for you is, why is soy not good for people with thyroid issues? And two, you mentioned that you did some testing for the food sensitivities and you said that they weren't your regular tests. Would you mind elaborating a little bit more of like, what kind of testing did you do to discover the gluten sensitivities?
Sure. There's information out there about soy. And again, I believe soy is in, I don't know, not 90%, 96% of it is GMO soy. It's not like your organic tofu and things like that, right? Or, it's all processed into like junk foods, processed junk foods, that kind of thing. So that's part of the problem with the soy, in that it causes inflammation because of that. And then a lot of people are sensitive to it. It's a high level of sensitivity. And then the other aspect of it is that women with thyroid, or men too with thyroid conditions, just women have more of it. It can be considered to be goitrogenic, meaning it can cause a growth of the thyroid gland, or like an abnormal growth of the thyroid gland. And that's where it becomes dysfunctional over time. I think you hear people say the jury's out on that. Like there's some research that shows like no way, no how, do not eat the soy if you have a thyroid issue. And then there's others that would say probably not that big of a deal. I'm also sensitive to it. With a test that I took was a saliva test looking at a specific immunoglobulin. So our immune system is composed of different types of immunoglobulins that tell us different things as far as like like where there's inflammation, or where the secretions are, how they're being tested. And so that kind of gives us an indication of our sensitivity, or maybe how recent we've eaten, whatever the food is. And that's why, personally, just on a side note of food sensitivity testing in general, most of the people I work with are pretty anxious. And a lot of people, when they're going through their hormonal changes, are anxious. So if they order an online food sensitivity test and they get this 40-page report, and they see that I'm like, I can't eat carrots, I can't eat hummus, I can't eat broccoli, I'm supposed to be eating all these good things because I'm sensitive to it, I have an allergy to it, and their takeaway is, I can't eat anything. And then they're more stressed, more overwhelmed. And so unless they don't have guidance on like the proper way to pull things out, add them back in. And if they were eating them in the last, right up until the test, of course they're going to show up, because those tests usually test something called IgG usually. And that's going to look back within the last few weeks of what you've been taking in.
So does that mean that they may or may not have a sensitivity to it if they've had it in the last 2 weeks?
Exactly. It's not super accurate.
Mm.
In that, do you really have a sensitivity to this? When we talk about, people have peanut allergies and anaphylaxis and things like that, that's an IgE reaction. That's where your throat swells. I have had that too with strawberries, where you have that. So that's a no-go, no matter what, no matter how good they are for you, right? But then the IgG will kind of say that, yeah, you have a little sensitivity to this, but you've been eating it recently. So does it make you sick or does it not? So that's where you need to have someone help you kind of heal and seal the gut, and then test these foods again. And then you can see, does this, supposedly benign food actually cause an issue, or doesn't it? And I would say that could be similar to soy, except for that it's in all the processed foods. It's very inflammatory. And if you have a thyroid condition, probably not your best source of protein.
Thank you.
That was really interesting. You just said that by working on healing the gut, a lot of the sensitivity issues can be healed. That to me is really interesting, because then that does give us hope that if we have allergic reactions to different foods and food type, that there is a way through it to be able to look at our gut and our health and our other pieces and start healing them.
Yeah. And a lot of it are these kind of latent reactions. Like I think of the gluten, we talked about that, but like the casein and dairy, a lot of times people have, that gunky throat, that postnasal drip, they'll have itchy ears, watery eyes, and they're like, oh, it's just my allergies. Well, no, it's because casein is causing you a lot of trouble. So if you can heal and seal your gut and then moderate, maybe remove the dairy or whatever, the casein in particular, away for a length of time, and then test it, you might be able to tolerate it. Like for me, I have a threshold. For example, I do heavy cream in my coffee because I like the texture, but it has a lot less casein in it than regular milk or ice cream. Not that I put ice cream in my coffee, but you know what I'm saying? It's like got a lot more casein in it. And so if I were to have the heavy cream in my coffee and then have ice cream and then have milk for dinner, but that would cause me problems. I would feel the swelling, the inflammation. I'd probably have a gunky throat. If I go over this threshold, but if I keep it to maybe some Greek yogurt and maybe a tablespoon of heavy cream in my coffee, that's fine. But 10 years ago, that would not have been fine.
There's a lot of like rice milk, oat milk, almond milk.
Mm-hmm.
So those are other substitutes that we can use. Do they
Yeah.
act the same way?
Depending on the person, if you are celiac, you need to make sure your oat milk is labeled gluten-free. That's certified gluten-free, because there's cross-contamination with oats and wheat and barley, and mostly wheat. So you have to be mindful of that if you're celiac. But yeah, I mean, most other people can handle other types of milk as long as they don't have an allergy to almonds or something. Usually tree nuts people are very aware if they're allergic with that IgE thing. It's those types of things that's that functional nutrition perspective, like root cause nutrition, whatever kind of buzzword you want to use with it. But it's way different. I've been to dietitians because I'd be like, look, I'm frustrated. I can't lose weight, even though I didn't really have like this major weight problem. I just didn't feel like myself. I didn't feel right because I was so imbalanced with my thyroid and then my sex hormones. And their answer to my problems was, you're not losing weight on 1,200 calories. Well, you just need to eat 1,000 calories then. And then just exercise a whole bunch. So I was treated for an eating disorder because of all this, to be honest. I went to outpatient eating disorder treatment. My purge was exercise. I would skip college classes to go to the gym because there was like a class or 3 in a row that I wanted to do. So then I created a whole other dynamic that did nothing for my hormones, did nothing for the stress in my body that affected my thyroid hormone, my sex hormones. I mean, it's just a vicious circle because you can't get the support that you should. So I don't do nutrition that way. I don't say eat this many calories and then go burn this many calories and then everything is golden, because that's not the truth. In most cases, if you have any imbalance, the calories in, calories out model doesn't really work that well until maybe you get balanced.
And that's such an important point that I want women to hear, because as we're going into menopause and we're starting to see the weight gain, and there's so many reasons for that. And then you go online and everything be like, oh, well, calories in, calories out. That's it. There's nothing else to it. Anything else is hogwash. Even my own endocrinologist, I never could get with him and could get my thyroid hormones at the levels that they needed to be. And I was gaining weight. And so I said, gosh, I'm down to 1,000 calories a day. I work out, I jog on the treadmill 3 miles a day. And he says, well, if 1,000 calories isn't doing it, drop it down to 600. So I did that for, 2 months. And I'm just like, wow. Yeah.
It makes me so then people hearing this and who have probably heard similar things, you have to think about when you do that, and we have to first of all be advocates for ourselves. We cannot give up our own like common sense for guidance like that just because it's a doctor or a trusted healthcare professional. You can't substitute your own judgment, but we do because we're desperate, right? We're desperate and we're trying to function. The thing is they don't tell you, and I don't know why, because they've had more biochemistry than I have with my education for sure. But I know that that's going to downregulate your metabolism. You're going to lose muscle. You're going to waste your muscle. So you're going to downregulate your metabolism even more. And now you're going to gain weight when you eat 800 calories.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to blame you for eating too much. And that's the thing that absolutely blows my mind. And that I'm still hearing this to this day from my people that work with me. This is the kind of thing they're being told all the time. And I want to impress upon people, you can lose fat or change up your body composition while you're getting healthy. But it's not losing weight to get healthy. It's getting healthy so you can lose weight.
Yes.
That's the switch that needs to be flipped. But we've been told you would be so much healthier if you would just lose 20 pounds.
Exactly. And just, it's been driving me nuts to hear that, because most of us, I don't sit around eating Big Macs all day long. I don't sit around eating bonbons with my feet up on the couch. I could exercise more. Like you said earlier, you're not perfect. I'm not perfect either, but it galls me to hear that, oh no, you're unhealthy. You need to lose weight to be healthy. Or am I overweight because I've got something going on? And that's been a battle that I've been facing for 20 years. And so, yes, thank you for saying that and emphasizing that, because then it gives us like, okay, rather than trying to
beat ourselves up,
over eating less. And just a real quick story, even my mother, because when I was going through that very low calorie diet that my doctor wanted me to do, I remember my very first date with my husband, we just celebrating our 10-year anniversary today. My very first date with my husband, I had never met him. We were blind date meeting at a restaurant. And my mom was like, well, be very careful. And I said, oh yeah, he's a stranger. I'll text you. Call. He goes, no, make sure you don't go over your calories at the restaurant. I'm like, all righty.
You get it from every angle,
You get it from every angle because, and I would walk and she'd be like, well, I'm so worried about your heart, Marti. And, my weight has gone up, my weight has gone down, my weight has gone up. It's the cycle. But a question I wanted to ask you before I forget it is, it sounds to me from what I'm hearing from you and what we've heard from other practitioners is really, we need to heal and seal the gut. How do we go about finding out what is going on with our gut?
Well, yeah, I do. It's called a gut health test. It's a stool sample. So it's not the greatest thing to have to do, but we get a lot of amazing information from it. We get 6 parts, 6 categories of information where we look at inflammation in the gut, and we can check out your immune system in your gut. We look at the microbalance in your gut. We look at if there's anything that's overgrowing or undergrowing, and put together specific protocols in order to replenish that. So there's usually a protocol to deal with dysbiosis, like if you have an overgrowth of one thing and an undergrowth or not enough of the other things, and usually it's an overgrowth of a few things that are causing the symptoms, the bloating, the either constipation or diarrhea, could kind of go either way. So we heal and seal that first, and then we need to repair and replace and replenish. And that we have another phase of the protocol for that. So it's very specific and tailored to the individual. And I love it because it's kind of all encompassing and looks at those different categories, and it just like puts a nice picture together. And until you have that in check, or if you're not doing that while you're working on your nutrition, it's gonna be really hard to absorb and assimilate the nutrition, those vitamins and minerals and amino acids and antioxidants. Those are called micronutrients. It's really hard to assimilate those into your system to fuel your body, to help make those hormones, to help your brain fog, to help your mood problems. If you don't have good quality and good levels of all those nutrients, those wheels and cycles you learned about in 10th grade biology that I taught for 12 years, that doesn't work. It doesn't go. They don't function. Those wheels are blocked up. So that's kind of the goal in the process.
That's really interesting. Some of the things that have just come to me is, number one, the cultural messages around food and the things that we're being told by our healthcare professionals about losing weight, calories in, calories out. I mean, those are still messages that we're really hearing today. And you have to step outside of those norms to really learn better ways of breaking those myths, so to speak, and debunking those cultural messages to actually understand and develop healthier relationships with your food. And that food is medicine. And so if we don't treat our food sacredly, knowing that it can heal our body, we have to change our mindset, and we have to shift how we are looking at our body and what we're putting in and what it's doing and how it's doing that. And to better understand it, we need to work with wonderful people like you, Tiffany, that can really educate us and show us what it is that we can do to start understanding how to see our body and our nutrition differently, because it's healing things in our body, right?
Yeah, exactly. I always tell people, I do live trainings every week in my group, and I always talk about, why do people still struggle? Why are people still struggling after all this time? And it's because we're kind of defeated. We've done every possible thing under the sun. I brought some of those labs to my doctors. They don't know how to read them. I didn't know this at the time. I just assumed they understood how to read those tests, but they don't. They're not trained that way. It's not because they're not smart enough. They just are not trained that way. And so we have to be willing to be tenacious and stubborn, like I was, to keep advocating and to keep figuring it out. And you have to invest in yourself, whatever way that looks, whether it's mentally, emotionally, financially, spiritually, however you need to do it, you have to do it. Because my biggest fear for people is that they just give up. Because like I had been there where It was just too hard to keep going. I didn't even want to keep going a lot of the time. And I just knew that there was no option to not, but I was not going to settle for feeling like I was feeling. So that's what I want people to take away, is that there are options. And even if you think you've done everything, you haven't. Someone will show you or teach you something different that will, like, a light bulb will go on, or it'll click, or you're more ready to take it in and do it and do the thing you need to do, and it'll work. Something will click.
Mm.
Let's switch gears for a little bit about supporting our brain health, because I know that nutrition has a big impact on our brains. And as we're going through menopause, a lot of us are starting to notice that our memory is not what we want it to be. Obviously, we've talked about our emotions, and there's nutritional reasons with that. But what can you share about our brains?
Well, that was one of the huge things for me with mood issues that was going on and on forever. And learning about how the connection between the composition of our meals, as well as the quality of the protein that we're eating, and the timing of our foods. And not, you don't have to get real into the minutia of, it has to be at a certain time of day in particular, but just not eating all day long. I think the average number of meals and snacks people eat each day in the US is like 12 or something like that, 12 times a day. So what you're doing is you're constantly creating a spike in blood sugar, then you're spiking insulin, then you're spiking cortisol, and all that kind of hijacks the production of brain chemicals in an indirect way, like the dopamine and serotonin and things like that can help level us out and help us become satisfied when we do eat something. And so it's more about dialing in the nutrition, making sure that it's balanced and quality foods as much as possible. You don't need me to sit here or anybody else to say Cheetos aren't good for you or whatever that is. I don't care if it's the healthy version of it, like the baked ones or not. Like, they're not going to really serve a purpose for you getting healthier. Trying to eat whole foods the majority of the time is going to be huge in balancing out that brain health in whatever way that looks for you. And there's different dynamics of it. One example I can tell you, people who present to me with high anxiety, and you can tell there's just a lot of stress in their life, or that they've just been that anxious person. They're just always had that kind of profile. There's a common group of nutrients that are deficient with these people. And one of them in particular is vitamin B5, B as in boy 5. And the reason for that, and this is the dynamic that people don't know. So when we replenish that level therapeutically, it can change their life. They just start to be more level, because what it does is our nervous system has an excitatory side, and then it has an inhibitory side. And it needs to be in balance, right? We need that excitatory side to power us through, to have the energy to put on a presentation or whatever it is. And then we need that inhibitory side to calm us back down. So when people are like this all the time and they're super anxious all the time, and if they are also lacking this B5 and we replenish that, it allows that B5 to cut that excitatory of the brain down so that the inhibitory can come back up, and so that you don't have all these excitatory neurotransmitters firing with no control whatsoever. And so that B5 shunts that to level things out, and then people kind of come back, and it's like it can happen within a few weeks, or like, is it possible I have better focus and I'm not so, I just feel more level. I just feel kind of light. That's just kind of how they describe it. And it's simple. It's just not easy if you don't really have people looking for those types of patterns and connecting the dots. And it can be impacted greatly, is what I was trying to say.
And weren't we talking about that our brains, as we're going through menopause, they're noticing changes in brain scans, which I remember you telling us they hadn't even been looking at until recently.
Yeah. 2015 was the first time they thought, let's look at a woman's brain when they're going through menopause. Let's check that out. That's the first time that's ever happened. And the thing is so now they're getting smarter about this. And then there's still a huge disconnect between women going through menopause, postmenopausal, and there's all types of controversy about BHRT. And I know that there is ways to go about it and ways not to go about it. And I'm not saying anybody should do it just willy-nilly. That's not the thought on there. But what we do know is, as we are going through this and our hormones drop, there is like a high incidence of Alzheimer's and cardiac problems, cardiovascular disease in women that are not supported with any kind of replacement of any kind. I can't remember the statistic. It's not new information, but I think it's just like getting out there a little bit more. But there's a pretty high statistic showing, or high incidence of women who have not been supported with BHRT or any kind of replacement have a high incidence of dementia, Alzheimer's, and a plethora of other things. As we lose estrogen, and you think about your parents or your aunts or people in your family, when did they start going on high blood pressure medication? About when they turned around 50, something like that. You know, it's kind of the pattern. And it's when we lose estrogen, our blood vessels kind of stiffen. And that's why our blood pressure goes up. So yes, it's a part of aging. We lose estrogen or hormones because we're aging. It all goes together with that too. But if you feel like you want to try a replacement and you need prescriptions for that, so you're going to need someone who is actually able to do that, can get and is knowledgeable. I don't just go with don't go with someone on TikTok, probably. You probably know the person.
Yeah.
But also there are ways to avoid actual prescription ones too. I'm not well versed on either one of them. I just know that there are things to do to combat those symptoms and the changing brain and in women going through the hormonal changes.
Wow, that's really interesting, because as we are aging, yes, we are seeing a lot of those, like the high blood pressure coming on, that now they're putting us on different medicines for that. When really, if we go back to more of our traditional ways of taking care of ourselves, then we can prolong a lot of those old age types of symptoms that do come on us, right?
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of women who are on 2 or 3 different blood pressure medications.
Mm. Wow, that's just amazing. We also talked a little bit about stress as being a common thread in many of our health issues and how it impacts not only our brain, our heart, our gut, everything that's chronic stress, and how really, it affects our body and mind.
Yeah, that could be a whole topic in and of itself as well. It's just a huge thing because we all have stress in our life and we like to compartmentalize good stress and bad stress. But the problem is our bodies do not know the difference. It responds the same way. It creates more cortisol, more adrenaline. It just does what it needs to do to get you through. So I always give people the example that if you're planning for a wedding, it's all happy, it's fun. Most of the time, I would think, it's like a joyous occasion. Everybody's happy about it, but it's stressful, but it's a good stress. You hear that all the time. And then to contrast that, planning for a funeral, that's stressful too. That's a bad stress. Your body doesn't have a clue if you're going to a wedding or a funeral. Your body knows that it's just like this, that it's just bound up and it's stress. It's pumping out all different kinds of chemicals to try to power you through. And when you're in chronic stress, it shunts your body's ability to produce good thyroid hormone or convert the thyroid hormone. It causes a little disconnect in producing the progesterone and things, because when you are producing too much cortisol, instead of taking the pregnenolone and making progesterone and things, it'll steal it and pump the cortisol because it's got to try to keep you alive. So it's a compensatory mechanism. It's designed to save us and keep us safe. But when we're constantly running away from the saber-toothed tiger, there's no way that chronic conditions don't set in. And that's why you see often when women have a baby, it's not uncommon where a couple years later they end up with like a Hashimoto's or something like that. A couple years, because pregnancy and delivery is no joke. It's very stressful on the body. So that's where, especially if you're like younger in the 35-ish and starting to notice hormonal changes, you have got to deal with the stress, and there's healthier ways to deal with stress than others. So deal with your stress in healthy ways. Don't minimize your stress, because we can always say, oh, so-and-so has it worse. Oh, I would hate to be in their position. My situation is much better. Maybe true, but that does not mean that your body isn't stressed out. So don't dismiss that. We're dismissed by everything else. We don't need to do it to ourselves. I would say that going through and during actual menopause, when those changes really start to happen, you got to manage the stress, because that's going to help you go through it a lot more seamlessly, a lot more level, if you're already getting your stress in check.
Absolutely. Stress affects us on so many levels. And sometimes we don't even realize that we are under stress until we step back and actually put ourselves in a different mindset or in a different location sometimes and realize how much stress it is. And stress is really sneaky because it comes out in different ways. It's not just the flash of anger that's caused definitely by stress, but it can also be, I'm tired all the time. That's also our body saying, there's too much stress and I just want to go to sleep. And that's how my way of dealing with it. Or stress can be like emotional eating or emotional drinking, or it can be smoking cigarette. It can be so many different things. And actually looking at the root of that. And that's a hard thing to do because you have to like do a little bit of a personal inventory in there to actually look and say, okay, maybe I am underneath a little bit of stress, but what am I going to do? Maybe I still have kids at home. I still have to go to a job. I still have to function every day. How can I bring that stress level down? And there are a lot of really good answers for that. And part of what I work with women is helping them to, number one, identify where those stressors are, and then how to reduce those stresses by making lifestyle changes that can help them to calm that stress. Because stress doesn't just go away in one moment or one day just because you realize it. Stress takes time to come out of your body, and it has a lot of things that have to components about stress. It can be the way that our lifestyle is, our eating habits, not taking very good supplements. It could be the hormone imbalances. So having somebody actually working with you, like one of us wonderful ladies here, can really help you to start identifying where those stresses are and how to start reducing them so that you can start building back health.
Yeah, and managing that stress creates your body's ability to be resilient. It creates space for that to happen. If you are tired and wired, burning the candle at both ends, not sleeping, eating garbage till you go to bed at midnight, you cannot create health. You're only creating dis-ease in all the ways you can think of. So you have to be able to manage that stress to create the resilience to get healthy.
I think a lot of women too might think, well, gosh, I'm just always going to be under stress. I mean, yeah, I can do some stress relieving stuff, but it's just going to come back. And I say, that's why we keep doing it. That's why we have tools in our toolbox, why we take some time, even if it's 20, 30 minutes a day or even a little bit less, but build up, kind of like you don't just go run around the block once and, hey, I'm fit.
Run a marathon now.
Yeah, exactly. Got to keep pulling that stress, relieving that stress, letting it go, releasing it from our body so we can come back to a neutral, like you said, to be resilient. And then it's like, okay, let's go through the day and we pick up a different stress.
Yeah.
And people say, like you were saying, well, my stress isn't as big as somebody else's. Well, that may be true, but your friend may have different coping mechanisms.
Right.
So she's handling her stress way different than you are handling yours. And maybe she might look at your stress and be like, oh, I don't want that stress.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't judge. Don't minimize your own stress and own it. We have it because we're all different.
Yes,
Yep.
we are. Now,
Very
Tiffany, you have a program that you wanted to share with us?
Yeah, so I have the fatigue fix programs, and kind of how people can jump into those just depends on their needs. So I have the fatigue fix programs that you can add on testing if you want. You can just have a lot of nutrition coaching, a lot of one-on-one, lots of programs and resources within those with tailored guidance. I have something that can fit everybody for what they're needing. I would say 99% of the people I work with are women. A few men kind of roll in once in a while, but we cover the bases of building you up from the bottom up, basically working on that gut health, working on stress management, incorporating some lifestyle things in there. I'm not a life coach, I'm not that, but I talk about it in ways that I know how and within my scope and with what I understand and how it'll affect their nutrient status. And they get a very step-by-step approach, have someone to hold their hand through it, and they get to be heard.
Can you help people get connected to getting the gut health testing and the trigger sensitivity testing? Can you guide women in that right direction? And then do you look at their results and help guide them and advise them with that?
Yeah, within the programs, I offer those tests, and then they can access it through me, depending on where they're different in other countries than the US, then that's a whole different thing. Then we just have to stick with nutrition coaching with them usually. That's how I can help guide them and put their programs and processes together that are tailored for them specifically. It's not a one size fits all cookie cutter approach. There are some things that are repeated, like some of the stuff about the stress and some of the basic things about gut health. Those can apply to everybody for their life, but the protocols and the processes are very tailored and specific to the individual.
Wonderful. And how do women reach you?
I will have a link to the program application. So it's just a little explanation in a video that's in there, and then they can fill out a form. It takes minutes to do it, and that's how we can get connected and get started in the right direction. So it can help me tailor which program would be the best option for them. So that's what I would encourage people to do, to submit an application. If you're ready to move forward and you're sick of being sick and tired, sick and tired of being sick and tired, then it's time. It's time to make a change and actually set the tone and set examples for your kids and your family, and do the thing for yourself. Finally take care of yourself.
Those are great words of wisdom. And we're so glad that you, Tiffany, are here with us today, and that so much amazing information and your story. I'm sure that there are so many women out there that this is just resonating with them. And I'm so glad that you're able to share it, and that you have accomplished so much, and that you're willing to give back. If you're in the menopause support group and have a question for Tiffany, hit her up or go to her link and check her out. Thank you so much for sharing your wealth of information. We're just so blessed today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I just want people to know that there's a way. There's something that can be done to help them feel better.
Wonderful to hear. All right, as we're winding up, before we close, it is time for the marble of the day, for the opportunity to enter in and win a $250 spa gift certificate at the Menopalooza Retreat in Sedona. The marble of today is friendship. I'll spell it FRIENDSHIP, friendship. In the show notes or in the description of this podcast, there is a link that ends with marbles. Go ahead and click on that. You'll be prompted to enter in friendship, the marble of the day, and there is your entry into the contest. Now, as we talked about earlier, the first rule is you have to be coming to the retreat, the Menopalooza Retreat in Sedona in November. So if you haven't done that yet, go ahead and sign up. Then go in and click this link to enter in this marble. That'll be one entry into the contest. Now, if you would like to up your chances, you can listen to the previous podcast. This is our third marble. So the previous two will have different marbles you can listen to and enter those in. And we have about 3 more marbles coming. So you'll want to listen to all of the Menowave Lounge podcasts during the summer to make sure you have all 6 marbles. That gives you 6 opportunities to go into the drawing. The drawing will be held before the retreat, and the winner will be notified before we get there so that you can book your time and book your spa session. And one final thing before we close out, as we're talking about stress and managing stress, it's near and dear to all of our hearts, especially mine and Robin, but I want to remind you that every Wednesday evening throughout the summer and beyond, I am holding what I call a mind massage, relaxing the mind to help manage that stress, to help start teaching you tools on how to do this on your own with hypnosis. Hypnosis is a wonderful tool because it guides you into complete and total mind and body relaxation. So if you are in the menopause support group on Facebook, if you go over to the event section, you'll find the weekly mind massage link to that event. You just click on that, and then you click on another link to actually register and pick a time. Now, these are every Wednesday night. So if I've got one coming up next Wednesday and you're interested in it, but you just can't make that Wednesday date, that's fine. Look ahead, pick whatever Wednesday that's coming up that will work for you, and just enter in your information. This is a wonderful introduction for those of you who may be curious about hypnosis and have never experienced it. To do this in the privacy of your home, it is a group session, but depending on how many people are on there, it might be the only one, and you just get me one-on-one, which is an even bigger benefit. So I will have the link to sign up for the mind massage as well in the show notes. Robin, how can women get a hold of you?
Oh, well, I am bodymindcoaching.biz, and I offer a mindset reset So if you want to see things in a different way, change your health, reduce your stress, look at what the anxiety pieces are and make some shifts, I have a free mindset reset, and that's a one-on-one conversation with me. And women walk away going, wow, I can see things differently. I can start creating new habits and healthy habits and start looking at taking care of myself differently in today's world. So I also want to say, if you like our podcast, please leave a remark and hit that subscribe button. We are on Spotify, we're on Apple, we are on YouTube. Of course, we are in the Women's Support Group on Facebook and Amazon. We're everywhere. So share this with your friends. Tell other women about that there is help, that we have these wonderful experts on like Tiffany, and that we are here every week. We have a new podcast out. So smash that like button. Come join us in Sedona and come be a part of our group. Tiffany, it was so amazing to have you here. Thank you so much. And Marti, thank you. And this is the Menowave Lounge, hot flashes and cool conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in the Menowave Lounge. If you'd like to connect with Marti, Robin, our guests, or any of our expert Menowave care providers for personalized advice and support, head on over to our website at menowave.org and fill out an assessment that will match you with a provider who knows just how to help. Remember, you don't have to face menopause alone. Our team is here to provide the guidance and care you deserve. So, take that step towards reclaiming your well-being and connect with a Menowave care provider today. Thank you again for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Menowave Lounge, hot flashes and cool conversations.